war, terrorism, propaganda, surveillance. These are just some of the tools used by powerful governments and regimes to control their citizens and the world. Throughout history, these tools have been used differently and with varying effectiveness. But in more recent history, the last two have been playing a bigger and bigger role in government and control. Propaganda got really big at the start of the 20th century in the World Wars and played a huge role in the Cold War. But even more important in recent times is surveillance, with spies and intelligence agencies using and manipulating information to win wars such as D-Day, and again the Cold War as a whole. Now in the 21st century, technology and infrastructure has advanced so far that there is a much bigger threat to the world and society as we know it. Imagine a myth, a powerful entity fighting for control, and helpless civilians oblivious to the world around it. This is the resistance. This is the story of the giraffe. The average viewer at this point may be a little bit skeptical, and I don't blame them. Giraffes are tools used by the government of the world to maintain control of the citizens and to help fight political disputes? This would sound crazy to a normal person if we spent all our lives being taught that giraffes are actually animals. This is the government being big brain. You see, by teaching about giraffes as real animals, but not really focusing on them like other African animals such as the lion, hippo, or hyenas, the government lets us think they're real, but only in a way where they're placed in the back of our minds, where we don't focus enough on them to see through the facade. So, if they aren't real animals, what are they? Well, giraffes is actually an acronym for Government Information Recon and Frontline Fighting Electronic Systems. This shows us the two functions of giraffes. 1, to do surveillance, and 2, to lead the charge in the case of a national security breach. But I know you're thinking, that makes no sense. Giraffes were from Africa. How could the governments of the world possibly use giraffes, who are in Africa, to spy on their citizens? Well, the answer is simple. Zoos. Zoos are a genius way to get these hulking towers filled with cameras and scanners into a crowded and booming population. The government gets people to spend hundreds of dollars on their families and food and cheap knickknacks just to finance the government to spy on them like a fool. And you may think it's no big deal, as many people don't go to the zoo anymore, as people are staying home more often with their smartphones and TVs. This technology is becoming the norm now, but with consumers getting more advanced products, so does the government. And if people just needed to go to the zoo to get spied on, well, the giraffe wouldn't need to be so big and tall. But wait, why spend millions of billions of taxpayers' dollars on creating an entire fake species, only to have a handful be in close proximity to their citizens? Wouldn't it make more sense to create a local species? Well, first off, if you do create a local fake species to spy on your citizens, then that gives citizens more chances to run up and get close instead of being at a distance behind an enclosure. Second, if each species were all localized, that would mean there would be multiple different species around the world that governments and paid-off scientists would have to answer for and explain. Okay, so that's why they can't be local, but why Africa? Why so much effort? Couldn't they just say they're real? I mean, Africa isn't exactly known for their economic prosperity and tourism. I'm sure they're more worried about hyperinflation and war criminals than telling the world that their government is spying on them. Well, this is where it gets complex, and a lot of answers kind of mesh in together here. First off, if you don't actually have them stationed in Africa after saying they're there, then white Instagram girls who like to travel are eventually going to realize. Second, in the off chance that Africa does get more economic dependence, then the government can't risk them revealing the truth. But the main reason giraffes are stationed in Africa, despite costing millions of taxpayer dollars, isn't to fool the masses. If that was the sole reason, then over all the years and economic downfalls and cultural shifts, the government wouldn't possibly put so much effort into it. Zoos alone cannot finance thousands of machines being spread and maintained all across a continent while also maintaining their own business and feeding and caring for those animals. So, what then? What else could giraffes possibly have a purpose for? Giraffes is actually an acronym for Government Information Recon and Frontline Fighting Electronic Systems. And frontline fighting, and frontline fighting, and frontline fighting, and frontline fighting. So far in this video, we've only discussed the recon and surveillance part of what a giraffe is, but have completely forgotten about the frontline fighting part of the acronym. You see, by keeping giraffes in Africa, countries like America that are cut off by seas, the majority of the world can still gain access by keeping permanent, unsuspicious animals in Africa. They have quick and easy land access, not only to Africa, but also the Middle East now, which in more recent years especially, has become a hotspot. Nothing like destroying your enemies quickly with an army of 6-meter tall tanks that have been recorded at running at 60 kilometers an hour. And that's when they're trying to hide the facts that they're machines. So that's all fine and dandy, but how do we know? How do we know that giraffes are fake? After all, I could just be making all these claims without any scientific data to back it up. So, what do we have to prove that giraffes aren't real? First, let's make it easier to prove that giraffes can't be real animals. It's already a joke that even people who think giraffes are real point out they're simply too big. The square cube law states that as an object gets larger, height-wise, the surface area gets bigger faster, and the volume taken up grows even faster. The strength of any object to hold up its own weight comes from the surface area, but the actual weight comes from the volume. Since volume grows faster than surface area, it quickly gets to the point where something increasing in size can no longer support its weight. For example, look at an elephant, the biggest land mammal in the world. By what I just said, it seems the bones of an elephant shouldn't be able to hold its own weight, but actually there's an advantage over giraffes. Look at those thick-ass legs. Not only are they very sexy, they also allow for much thicker bones that could hold up the weight of the elephant. Now, look at the giraffe. While not as fat as the elephant, giraffes have a lot more height and have much skinnier legs. I mean, horses are known for easily breaking their legs and being unable to run. And here we have the giraffe with much longer and lankier legs that are supporting even more weight. And you can see very easily that if giraffes were in fact real animals, they would have gone extinct long ago. So, giraffes aren't real, but then how do we know that they're made by the government? Maybe they're made by Photoshop experts, or they could be Japanese mechas. How do we know that they were made by the government from all around the world? This is where the resistance comes in. For many years now, the resistance has been uploading pictures from all around the world of giraffe prototypes, malfunctions, and of course some less serious posts as well. From these posts we can clearly see that giraffes are being mass created for the government for surveillance purposes. And what's truly scary is how many different posts are on there. This is no small project of a company. This is the doing of a government superpower. But what is this resistance I speak of? Is it another shadow government organization, or a bunch of vigilantes breaking the law and causing more harm to the taxpayer? Or maybe it's some goofy kids trying to get a reaction out of an older generation? No. The resistance is an open forum, a subreddit on reddit.com that discusses the government's wrongdoings. r/giraffesdontexist. r/giraffesdontexist is the safe haven for giraffe truthers like me to speak and preach to the public, and was ever so clearly marked as satire a few months ago to dissuade the government from fully shutting it down. But how did it all start? How did humanity go hundreds of years under the control of governments of the world just to now start seeing the truth? The idea first came to the public eye way back in 2005, thanks to the help of a little-known studio called DreamWorks. So how did the creators of Shrek open the eyes of so many? Well, as stated earlier, the government likes to teach us about giraffes, but not focus on them, so we know they exist, but don't think enough about giraffes to create doubt. They do this by controlling schools, of course, but also the media. And in 2005, DreamWorks, under order of the government, made Madagascar. But unlike other movies like Lion King, DreamWorks didn't make the giraffe a background character. Oh no, Melman, played by Ross, played by David Swimmer, played a supporting character. I guess they thought since Melman wasn't the lead, he wouldn't get too much attention, but after getting a lot more than they first anticipated, The government forced DreamWorks to make more movies, but to focus more on the penguins' popularity, but without forcing Melvin out, as to not raise suspicion. This frankly only made things worse. Even though DreamWorks started to focus more on the penguins, the hype they brought in just let more people discover the existence of Melman, putting it not in the sidebar, where there was no doubt, but front and center. After this, DreamWorks were forced to make Madagascar 3, the cringiest of the series, to turn people away from the movies, but at that point it was too late. The second enlightening had begun. Only 4 years after the third movie, the subreddit was created, but recently it's become under attack by spies and government agents. They post stuff saying that giraffes are just imaginary and not real and that everything's made up. Instead of saying that they're government machines, they put them on the same level as unicorns. They repost the same tired memes to the point where they're now banned. It doesn't seem to do much damage, but it turns people against the subreddit, like anti-vaxxers or even worse. The satire tag put in by the mods to protect the sub is now being used to turn it into a joke. As of this moment, the sub has about 180,000 followers, and at this point it's hard to tell who exactly is a truther and who's a government agent. But with your help, we can still win this fight. You can join the sub, you can post original content and keep the sub alive and spread the truth about giraffes. They say ignorance is bliss, but I think that's far from the truth, because while you're in ignorance, the oppressed are suffering. And your bliss isn't going to save them. Seriously though, guys, go follow the subreddit, because there's so much I couldn't cover, like how the different spot patterns are being created by different governments, all the subspecies and stuff, who's exactly controlling them, and just so much more details to go into. So anyway, thank you. So go check out the sub.